Good evening. Welcome, my friends, to the show that seemingly never ends. It will at some point, but we've a long way to go. And we are 10:01:25. 10:01:25. Friday night. Welcome back. And we've got a lot to talk about tonight. I'm not going to lie. Because, it's philosophy. I really can't. I really shouldn't. I really can't. I really shouldn't. So let me ask you this. Just let's get started straight up with the heavy-duty stuff, right? How was my day? My day was good. Yeah, my day was good. I woke up. Somebody needed an emergency call-in, so I did that. And then I did another call-in. And then I went to go and see Mufasa with Izzy, and then we did a movie review. And then I played some pickleball. And then I had a little bit of potato and meatball and salad. And then I am show. So, I would say it was a fine day of good philosophy and helping the world. So, of course, thank you everyone so much for your support of the show. freedomain.com/donate to help out. So, the day was good. How was your guys' day? How was your day? Working hard. That's a full day. Yeah, it was good day. Okay, well, while I'm waiting to hear about your days, there was something quite interesting that was going on in studies. Now, the studies were around testosterone. Have you got your testosterone levels checked? You might want to get them checked. Here's something interesting. So there's a new testosterone study, and it says giving men a dose of testosterone makes them less likely to, quote, feign pro-social behavior, end quote, in front of an audience. Basically, a man with higher testosterone will do what he truly believes is right, rather than what he thinks others think is right. So, let's read this. Humans are strategically more pro-social when their actions are being watched by others than when they act alone, using a psychopharmacogenetic approach. Say that 3 times drunk. We investigated the endocrinological and computational mechanisms of such audience-driven pro-sociality. So 192 male participants received either a single dose of testosterone, 150 milligrams, or a placebo, and performed a pro-social and self-benefiting reinforcement learning task. Crucially, the task was produced either in private or when being watched. And what happened was the higher testosterone men were able to do what they thought was right rather than getting sucked into this Milgram's experiment of doing what other people think is right. So this goes back to an old meme that's been floating around for quite some time, which says that most people who are unable to defend themselves, sort of physically weak and so on, they don't ask what is true, they can only ask what is approved of. What will I not get in trouble for saying? So, in terms of the fall of testosterone, I think that's interesting. I don't know what causes it. Microplastics in the balls, a sedentary lifestyle, excessive video games and stress, a gynocentric educational environment, absence of fathers within the homes. I think it's all, but the population is much more pliable and compliant when the population is lower testosterone. When men's are lower testosterone, we're just easier to push around. And high testosterone men, or what used to be average testosterone men, are incomprehensible. They're incomprehensible to low testosterone men. They look insane. A truth is only available to the strong. Truth, and this is why I've always told people, you don't know you don't know what your beliefs are until you work out. You don't know what your beliefs are until you're physically strong. Can you do 40 push-ups? Can you do 100 sit-ups? Can you do squat lunges? Can you do Satan squat frogs from hell called burpees?
What happened here?
Can you bench? Do you lift? Do you even lift, bro? You don't know what you believe when you're weak. You only know what you believe.
Let's just put it as
strong.
I see.
So, please, do your blood work. Not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, but I suggest get some blood work done and see where you're at. All right. So let's get to your comments. Let's get to your comments. Yeah, we put out a 2-part call-in today. Husband and wife FDR podcast, $57.99 and $5,800. Yes. So that's worth checking out. FDRpodcasts.com/57.99 and 5,800. Excellent stuff. And don't forget you can tip on Rumble and Locals here. If you'd like to help out the show, I'd really appreciate that. Let's see here. Usually these live stream prompts for Bitcoin purchase. This one would be the testosterone levels lab kit. Yes. I think, I'm a big fan of blood work. Get it done and figure out where you are. As you get older, I've known people who've just dropped off the face of the earth because they hadn't been tracking their health that way. It's good to get a baseline and good to check it out. For more on that, Mike Cernovich is a big proponent of blood work and he knows his stuff very well. So. All right. Boom. Yeah, so if somebody is physically weak, if they don't exercise, if they have, that sort of modern scant beard pudge face, the moon face, if they've got, sloping shoulders, bad posture, if all of their success is virtual, I'm not talking to the person, I'm only talking to the weakness. That drives me crazy. I'm not talking to the person, I'm not talking to the mind, I'm only talking to the weakness. One of the things in ancient Rome that was essential for maintaining power over the slaves was what? You know this guy, you guys know this. What were slaves never allowed to do? What was forbidden to slaves? What was forbidden to slaves? What were they not allowed to do? Forbidden. Cannot be done. They were not allowed to exercise. They were not allowed to work out. Well, they were allowed to read. I mean, a lot of them. I mean, some of them had to read if they were bookkeepers or accountants or something like that, but no, they were not allowed to work out. Yeah, the slaves, ancient slaves, were not allowed to exercise. It was forbidden. Any slave with muscles was severely punished. So that tells you something. Tells you something. Something quite important. Now, let me ask you this as well. Let me ask you this. Do you care? And I should. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. I don't really. But do you care about the fires?
Well executed.
You can promote a link here, Steve. That's fine. That's fine. So, what if muscles are needed for the work? Oh, my friend, you can puzzle that one out for yourself. You can puzzle that one out for yourself. Do you care about the fires in California? I mean, really, one of the greatest catastrophes in American history as far as wealth and ownership goes. Yeah, do you care? I mean, people are just reaping the rewards of being willfully ignorant. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people sold their souls to get wealth and power, bought houses in California, and the devil took them all. So fires are sad for the people who live there. Well, here's the thing, too. So in California, I think it was in 1988, in California, they voted in a law that said that insurance companies couldn't raise their rates without government permission. Why? Because the government didn't want the rates to go up, because insurance rates rising is bad for the government, because it indicates mismanagement on the part of the government, because the government has no skin in the game, right? FUMU, fuck up, move up, like you just get promoted. At least in the private industry, it's something called the Peter Principle, which is somebody who's always promoted one step above their actual competence. They're always voted in like one step. Thanks, Matt. They're always voted in one step above. So the junior programmer becomes a programmer, becomes a senior programmer, becomes a project lead, becomes a manager, and then they're bad at being a manager. But then it's hard to demote them. So someone goes one, but then they don't go beyond manager because they're bad at being a manager. So people get promoted one layer above their actual competence, and then they just kind of sit there doing damage, right? And that's just why a lot of people end up getting fired, because they go one step beyond their competence, and then so that's called the Peter Principle in the army, in government, and so on. And Kash Patel goes into this in his book, Government Youngsters. FUMU, fuck up, move up. You really screw something up, you will be promoted, because nobody wants to admit their mistakes and admit their faults. And the people who screw up, who have no shame about it, end up blaming everyone else and pretending they didn't screw up and everyone else betrayed them, and then they get very aggressive and people just promote them to get them out of their way. Also, a lot of people get promoted and moved into obscure positions, so they can't do any damage to the actual productivity of the organization in one form or another. So the Californians and the government, the Californians wanted something for nothing, which is don't make my insurance rates go up. And the government wanted something for nothing, which was votes, by just banning insurance companies from insurance. So the insurance companies in California, they're only allowed to use these old tables. They can't adapt to new circumstances, new conditions. And so, they want to hide rising crime from the population. And so one of the things that would happen with rising crime is insurance goes up. They want to hide arsonists, right? I did this whole presentation on the destruction of America's mental healthcare institutions, which you can find at fdrpodcast.com. Somebody could dig up the number. I can read it off. Thank you. And so they turned a lot of people loose from the asylums. And of course, they turned a lot of people loose from the prisons. And that's bad for society. It's a destabilization, right? Basically, it's people who had abused childhoods who got left behind do the crimes, and other people who had abused childhoods and got left behind release the prisoners into the population as a vengeance, right? So for more on this, you can check out my presentation on the French Revolution at premium.freedomain.com. So the government wanted to hide incompetence in the crime rates, and people wanted free or cheap insurance, so they banned insurance companies from being able to raise their rates. And they needed to raise their rates because government incompetence was massive. No controlled burns, not enough water storage, and factors other than pure meritocracy in the fire department and in the management of all of this sort of stuff. In other words, and I mentioned this before on the show, incredibly highly complex systems founded on a ruthless meritocracy cannot survive anything else. A system that is rooted on a ruthless meritocracy cannot survive any other methodology for promotion. So, in 1988, it became pretty much impossible for insurance companies to raise their rates in any sensible, reactive fashion. So what happened was, insurance companies just stopped insuring people. Can't make money at it. It's way too risky. They can do the math. They've got skin in the game. The government doesn't, and the people don't, at least in the short run. So what's happened, of course, is a lot of people's houses are burned to the ground, and they're not even insured. And then what's going to happen is people are going to try and rebuild. Right? They're going to try and rebuild. I mean, it's still some of the best real estate on the planet, right? So, shouldn't laugh, but this is the consequence of people's greed, corruption, and delusion. So, let me ask you, what is going to happen when people try to rebuild in California? What is going to happen when they try to rebuild in California? They are going to run into the endless, thorny, bottomless hellhole of permits, regulations, licenses and begging in different bureaucrats for permission. And given that everyone's going to try and rebuild at the same time, the delays are going to be massive. 5 to 10 years, easy, to get permission to rebuild. Now, you may know, you may not know that 5 or 6 years ago, I did a whole lengthy documentary on the disaster waiting to happen called California. It's called Sunset in the Golden State. You can get it for free at freedomain.com/documentaries. freedomain.com/documentaries. Now, I do love this. Dog ate my homework. Climate change. Climate change. It's just climate change. It's just climate change. Everything is climate change. Well, given that climate change, even if you believe in it, is a known thing, it still should have been taken into account by the government bureaucrats. Go back to the 1974 Roman Polanski/rapist film Chinatown for how corrupt the water situation is in California. It's wretched. But at least they gave a lot of firefighting equipment to Ukraine and money and everything. So another